Well, welcome to this episode of Wealth Coherence. I like that frequency, and it really goes along with like, what are you resonating with? Where are you incoherent? Where are you coherent? It's just another way of approaching life. And would you be willing to share an example of how you've applied this orientation to life and how you approach your narrative in a business situation where you had some challenges with the financial reality you were in? Because I think that's a really powerful story to help people see like how you can put it in action when you're in the midst of your career and your work environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we always we're going with life. Every day is a new day and it keeps moving forward. But I think it's also like in the business realm, it's just about recognizing that sometimes we hold on to something as if it's a mistake. Like
Mhm.
it's a mistake. I shouldn't have said it this way, and we dwell on it and we dwell on it. But sometimes you just got to realize that you said it, take ownership of it, and realize
Mhm.
that that is actually somehow, in some way, shape, or form, going to serve you for your highest and best if you can define
Mhm.
it as such. So a specific example might be just maybe a very challenging client that is just it's a challenging client. I'm looking for an example in my mind, but a challenging client whereby you believe it should happen, you need to close the deal, or uh,
Mhm.
in the financial realms that it should have manifest, or the fund should reflect at this specific time. And if it doesn't, and whatever happens, and worst case scenario, the client decides he's pulling out because of this XYZ, and you blame
Mhm.
yourself. But sometimes, from my experience, you got to say, I don't need this specific person in my world. And when you see it that way, because they choose to go on a new
Mhm.
adventure, and you see it that way, that's empowering, then you attract 10 more clients that are optimal for your experience, for your business moving
Yeah.
forward. So it's just
Yeah.
about being
That's good.
able to let go when needs to
Mhm.
let go, so that you can give your full attention to the clients that need it.
Right. Right. So that letting go of like it's interesting. There's a concept I've learned through many different teachers that I find is really effective when you um, have the full on commitment to something like a startup that you're doing or a new venture or something that really matters to you and you're super committed to it and you're going forward with it. That the most important thing is to release the stronghold on the importance of it. And it's an interesting dance with that because it's like, obviously, it's important to me because I'm totally committed to it. But it's more about, oh, I'm feeling compelled to do this. Like, this is really, I'm drawn to do this. So let me go forward with everything I have and bring it my very best. But when we hold loosely to the importance that we put on it, it allows for what's even better or what's meant to happen to show up in a way that if we hold on to it and say it has to look the way I think it's supposed to look, it may not end up looking like that. And I mean, I think when I was first thinking about starting my coaching practice for step families, I was really focused on just step families. And I was even thinking about getting like a vehicle that I could drive around and really bring forward ideas about families and just this kind of wacky different idea. And then I ended up being referred to a different company and working with really wealthy families that I didn't even know that work existed, right? It wasn't, I'm a social worker. I came to this because somebody recommended me. And all of a sudden, I found out these families really needed support, right? Because they weren't in coherence. They were really struggling in a lot of different ways in their communication, their trust, their ability to navigate really important decisions together. The soul, right? It's like the money piece had taken over, and the soul was somehow in need of support. And I ended up working with families that were extraordinary. And for 20 years, I've been working with them. And that was not what I set out to do. I
Mm.
had this idea of, oh, I'm going to help step families. And I do. I help step families. I write for them. I do different coaching for them. But it became so much bigger than what I could have imagined because I didn't hold on to the importance of it has to look a certain way. And it ended up be flying on planes all over the place instead of just in my local area. It was more of a it became global, right? I'm here, I'm talking to you in South Africa, right? I worked with people in the South Pacific, and it's so much bigger because of that strong conviction and commitment, but not necessarily holding on. So I could let go when certain things didn't pan out in the smaller way to allow something bigger. So that's what I'm getting from what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, follow your excitement with integrity and
Mm-hmm.
zero expectations as to the outcome. Because
Yeah. The expectations are so, they can be just, they can rob you of so much. And it's big in families for sure, because we have all these spoken, unspoken, unmet expectations. So I'm glad you said that, because I think really reorienting ourselves around that is extremely important. Yeah.
yeah, and I find it interesting because, different generations see the world very differently. A simple example would be, I mean, I
Mm.
remember when I was a kid, when I
Mhm.
was maybe around, let's say, 8 years old. And I remember thinking to myself, imagine having a watch that I could talk to and it would be able to communicate to my friend in the other room. Just imagine that. And now, today, my little sister, who is my age at that time, well, she's a little bit older now, but like 14 years old,
Mhm.
when she was 8 years old, that was her reality. That was a norm. So already that didn't exist, but my mind was using imagination and thinking, wow, that would be incredible. But now they are seeing the future very differently to what in my generation. So of course, there's going to be some sort of conflict between
Mhm.
the different generations because
Yeah.
they believe that certain things should be done a certain way. Then the next generation believe that certain things need to be done a certain way. And then the new generation, which we all hear about on the radio, I was actually quite happy. I heard that everyone's complaining about the new generation, that there's they say that in America, apparently there's etiquette. There's like an etiquette training, teaching for being able to introduce what Generation Z, Gen Z into the office space.
That's exactly. And I love how you're putting that forward, because every generation has thought about that in terms of the next generation. This is nothing new. We are accelerating in terms of our evolution in a lot of ways. And we're seeing the kind of effects of that. We're moving so quickly, and we haven't really caught up with the ethics around it and the etiquette around it. And I think what you're pointing to is so essential, because if you take a moment to look at where there's incoherence in the waves of the two generations and when they hit, then you can really look at, oh, where do we have to look at a meeting of the minds, and how do we understand each other's worldviews and world perspectives, as opposed to this right, wrong, good, bad, like, dislike, right? This kind of certainty about how it's supposed to look, when you can shift to, oh, how does it look for you? Oh, how does this work for this? And my father is 90 years old, and my
Wow.
nephew, who's 30, is his biggest champion. And my nephew will go and visit him, and my dad will just call me and say, oh, you won't believe what Sam did with my computer, and he showed me this thing on
Yeah.
my phone. And it's like he's bringing all of his gifts and his love and his what he's been native to his grandfather, who's just blown away by this whole world that he's opening up to him. So it's wonderful when those generations can meet from, and he has such respect for his grandfather, and wanting to support him and understand his worldview too. So I think that's really important, the generational understanding, for sure, for family coherence.
Absolutely. And that's why I think from like a professional point of view, it's critical to be able to have those conversations, that
Mm-hmm.
communication, to be able to bring coherence to what is spoken about at the dinner table or at
Mm-hmm.
the business table, because there's so much going on, and to be able to bring that coherence in a family office is
Mm-hmm.
what brings the love forward into the future.
Yes.
Because between your
So true.
father and the nephew, there are certain fundamental human values that
Mm-hmm.
remain. And that's what is important to bring forward. That will go
Mm-hmm.
on into forever, for as long as the
Yeah.
family office exists. And bridging that gap, I think, is a challenge, but it's exciting because the future is looking very interesting, especially when we are able to
Yes.
marry the different generations. And I think what I read is that the millennials are going to be the wealthiest generation in the history of America because of this
Hmm.
great wealth transfer.
Hmm.
So I think with a new vision for the future, with new technology, because everything stems from right here,
Hmm.
right now. So with
Yeah.
all this new tech, with all this new perspectives, how a world that we're busy painting, using family office, the wealth, and being able
Hmm.
to turn that into something incredible, I think we're underway.
Say that again, to turn it into something.
Yeah, to something beautiful, to
Oh,
continue letting
hmm.
this allowing this unfolding take place. So whatever we may define as, oh, this is not right, or this is not right, it's all taking place as it needs to take place. And
Yeah.
I think the new generation spending more time on tech, but just look how the future is moving towards that space. So I think we can just almost learn from it, allow it to take shape, and trust and have faith that everything will work out for the highest and best.